On one hand, you have the proud statistic: 2 charging points for every 5 electric vehicles on the road. On the other, you have the grim reality of a holiday weekend: queues of EVs stretching for kilometers at highway service stations. This is the awkward truth behind the new energy carnival, a truth that is tearing away the magnificent facade of an infrastructure feast. Hello everyone, today let's talk about the drivers who, during the recent national holiday, turned their new energy vehicles into a form of performance art at highway service stations. If you scrolled through social media during the holiday, you would have seen a bizarre, almost apocalyptic spectacle. At service stations across the country, a great wall of green-plated electric vehicles snaking from the charging area all the way back to the previous highway exit. The drivers' eyes were vacant, their expressions numb. In their hands, they clutched a crumpled ticket with a number on it, which might have read, "There are 87 users ahead of you." Some waited for 4 or 5 hours, their initial excitement curdling into a full-blown existential crisis. They waited from dusk until dawn, all for that brief, orgasmic 40-minute climax of charging. The rest of the time was spent in a stationary performance of man's harmonious coexistence with nature. It was less about charging a car and more about recharging one's soul with a deep philosophical reflection on past life choices and a profound sense of bewilderment about the journey ahead. The whole scene was a surreal, modern-day version of Waiting for Godot, played out on the asphalt of a public rest stop. And the most bizarre part of all this is how completely it contradicts the grand narrative we're usually fed. The news is constantly telling us that China has built the world's largest, most extensive, and most comprehensive charging network. It's the kind of statement that makes your blood pump with patriotic pride. And the numbers are admittedly staggering. As of this August, China has over 17 million charging points. In theory, that's 2 chargers for every 5 EVs. A generous ratio, you'd think. But reality has a way of slapping you in the face again and again, reminding you that mathematics and real life are 2 very different things. The key contradiction is hidden in one stark set of data. Of those 17 million charging points, a mere 66,000, less than 1% of the total, are located at highway service stations. So while the coverage is nearly 100%, meaning almost every service station has a charger, it's like being told that every city has a world-class hospital, but failing to mention that the hospital has only 1 doctor, and that doctor is on vacation. The coverage is for show. The actual capacity is the brutal reality. During the holiday peak, an estimated 14 million EVs were on the highways. Do the math, that's an average of 212 desperate cars competing for a single charging point. This isn't charging, it's a game of musical chairs, where the losers have to sleep in their cars. This brings us to the core business logic that gives every charging operator a migraine. The highway charging business model is, by its very nature, a tidal one. What does that mean? It means that on a normal day, the chargers are so idle you could find spiders weaving webs on them. But on a holiday, they are so busy the charging guns could melt from the heat. The average utilization rate for highway chargers in China is a pitiful 5.4%. On weekdays, it's even lower. But during a national holiday, demand can spike by more than tenfold. This starve on weekdays, feast on holidays model creates a vicious cycle. If you build enough chargers to meet the holiday peak, they will sit there as expensive metal monuments, losing money 95% of the time. But if you build for the average day, you get the chaos we see now. Capital is honest. It votes with its feet. The industry consensus is that a charging station needs a utilization rate of around 10% just to break even. Most highway stations don't even reach half of that. That's why the entities building and operating these stations are almost exclusively state-owned enterprises like the State Grid. They are shouldering it as a social responsibility because private capital has done the math and concluded that it is a terrible investment. And it's not just about the business model. The technical challenges are immense. Adding high-power chargers to a highway service station, many of which were designed decades ago, requires a massive grid upgrade. You often have to pull new high-voltage cables from substations that are kilometers away. The cost of this one step can be millions of yuan, several times the cost of a city-based station. On top of all this, you have the human element. Most drivers suffer from full battery obsession, a symptom of range anxiety. They'll insist on charging to 100%, even though the last 20% takes an agonizingly long time due to the physics of battery charging. If everyone could just unplug at 80%, the turnover rate could increase by a third and the wait times would be cut in half. But in the face of range anxiety, public morality is often a fragile thing. Of course, it's easy to complain. The good news is that solutions are being implemented. The Ministry of Transport has mandated capacity upgrades at the busiest service stations. New, ultra-fast, liquid-cooled chargers are being installed, promising a full charge in the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee. Some service areas are even deploying mobile power bank trucks to rescue stranded vehicles. In the long run, ultra-fast charging and battery swapping are the key. Imagine pulling into a station and swapping your battery in 3 minutes, just like refueling a gas car. The queuing problem would simply vanish. More creative solutions are also being explored, like using the now underutilized land and power infrastructure at highway toll booths, which have become largely redundant thanks to electronic toll collection. Ultimately, the holiday charging nightmare is a growing pain. It's the inevitable consequence of an industry that is growing so fast, its clothes from last year no longer fit. Our EV cells are #1 in the world. Our technology is cutting edge, but the supporting infrastructure, especially in these unique high-stress scenarios, is still playing catch-up. The goal of making charging as convenient as refueling is a complex, systemic challenge. Every holiday traffic jam is a stress test for that system. And while the problems it exposes are painful, they also point the way forward. A decade ago, there were barely any chargers on our highways. Today, there are millions. The progress is undeniable. The pain we're feeling now is just a temporary traffic jam on the road to the future. A few years from now, these photos of endless queues will likely just be a funny story we tell the next generation. A poet of our modern age might say of this moment, "The highway calls, a holiday decree, but range runs low for all the world to see. Too few the plugs, too many cars in need. A long night's vigil, planting a bitter seed. They camp and wait, a joke both dark and deep, while promises of power are hard to keep. But this, the pain of progress, we will find, is just a traffic jam for all mankind." That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.